record any tapping things, but I want to record just the first part of this. So I sent the email out. You probably read what I wrote about adversity. I'm going to go over it one more time. But before I do that, before we go over adversity, I want to do a little meditation first. I think meditation is one of the most powerful things we can do. Doesn't cost any money. It's been around for thousands of years. So we're going to kind of mix some Chinese medicine in, some emotional stuff, and some visual. And yes, thank you, Katie. So get yourself comfortable. Turn this TV off so it's a little bit darker. Maybe. Could hit the sensor there. So we're going to do a short little meditation that goes through the meridian system. And, you know, there's different emotions. A lot of people that have been coming for a while familiar that there's different emotions associated with different organs. And it's really interesting. Since we started, the group has been going, like there's a core group and there's people that come and go. But the core group's been working on, especially 2014, issues around being comfortable with our own feelings. Something that is, you know, sometimes foreign to people that are empathic and sensitive. You know, we tend to be shoving our emotions and focusing on others' feelings a little more than our own. So it's important to be in touch with our own feelings, our own emotions, and not only to feel them, but I want to get comfortable with feeling, because I've talked about this before, but you can imagine that the emotions really aren't linear. You know, you don't have like, can you kind of see me? I know it's kind of dark in here. But you know, it's not like you're happy here, and then you're not so happy, then you're sad, then you're angry, and then you're depressed. It's not like that. It's more of like a sphere of emotions. So what a lot of people do is they'll try to numb themselves on the negative emotions, and like taking, you know, basically eating is a way of numbing our emotions. A lot of people, you know, you look at somebody doing drugs and something and judge them, but you may emotionally be eating certain things, you know. And of course there's medications and antidepressants and things like that. But when you try to turn off the bad feelings, you wind up taking off of the good feelings too. So basically what happens is the smaller your sphere of feeling gets, to where sometimes if you're not careful, things just get numb and cold, and then you lose your spirit. Because to me, spirit comes through in the emotions that guide us. That's why just looking at the word emotion, it's energy in motion. So emotions are meant to guide us. So this meditation is a little multi-layered. We're going to be doing some pranayama with it, just some simple pranayama. Pranayama is just breathing exercise. It's moving energy with our breath. Then we're going to be using some Chinese medicine, just our focus, and letting ourselves feel emotions and be okay feeling emotions. So as I'm going through this, when I mention a particular emotion related to a particular organ or meridian, you can think of a situation you have going on now or in the past, or you can just try to feel the emotion. Does that make sense? You don't have to push it too far. You can just feel the emotion. So the first one we're going to start with is the lung meridian. First thing you do when you're born is you breathe. So let's take our hands and place them below the breast tissue, below the chest muscles, and on the lower rib cage. And just focus on your lungs. This is the bottom of your lungs. Just your hands on the lower rib cage, focusing on your lungs. The emotion associated with the lungs are grief. You know, like when you cry so hard you can't breathe. So if you've got some old grief that's in your body, and grief isn't just from losing somebody. It can be losing a job or losing a dream. It can be lots of different things. And what we tend to do is we tend to suppress these feelings, which then block the meridian system. So tap into this area and just allow yourself to feel any grief that you might have in your body. Just feel it. And the effort here is to be comfortable feeling the emotions. We all, everyone in this room and outside of this room, we tend to run from certain emotions. But in this moment, just let yourself feel the emotion in this controlled environment. Just feel any grief, any sense of loss. It could be an animal, a person, a job, a relationship, or a dream. Just let yourself feel it. No judging, just feeling it. Feel how it moves through the body and affects different parts of the body. Intensify the feeling, don't be afraid of it. Even though the emotions are meant to guide us, they're not meant to control us. It's what we do with the emotions and how we direct them that is our power. So feeling the grief, feeling loss, take a deep breath in, and just breathe the feeling out of your body. Now slide your hands down to your abdomen on the sides. Now we're focusing on the colon. From lungs we move into colon. Just your hands on the side of your abdomen. And the colon relates to issues around control and restriction. So allow yourself to feel that feeling of being controlled, restricted, not trying to run from it, just acknowledging it and feeling it. If you want to, you can bring in a visual of where you're feeling restricted, but it's not necessary. Just feel the emotion. The feeling of being restricted, unable to move like you want to, imprisoned. Let your body feel it. Don't run away from the emotion. The emotions get transformed when we feel them. So the hands on the side of your lower abdomen, focusing on the colon and the feelings of being controlled and restricted. Let yourself feel the feelings. Wherever you're feeling restricted in your life, whatever that visual is or that thought or that feeling, breathe a deep breath in. And then just breathe that out. Breathe that feeling out of your body, no longer needing to focus on it. Now bring your hands just below the mid-rib cage, where your stomach is located. You can just put palm over palm if you want to, focusing on the stomach area. Stomach governs worry and anxiety. So bring up the feeling of worry and anxiety. If you've got a particular situation, you can focus on that. And just let yourself feel the feeling. A lot of times we'll run from specific feelings, and when we run from them, we don't get the chance to transform them. It's feeling them and breathing through them and letting them go through us that we get rid of them or change them. So anything that you're worried about, just let that come to your mind and feel the worry. Don't judge it, don't try to change it, just let yourself feel the worry and anxiety. Then take a deep breath in, and then expel that worry and anxiety out of your body. Now we're going to go to the spleen. Spleen is on the left side, just below the rib cage. So just take your hands to the left side of your rib cage, just below, and focus on the spleen. The spleen governs issues related to self-worth. So anything that makes you feel unworthy, makes you feel less than, maybe where you compare yourself to others, tune into those situations and feelings and let them become stronger and stronger in you. Let yourself feel the self-worth, the low self-worth, the self-doubt. Not judging it, just letting it come to the surface so we can clear it. And take a deep breath in. Exhale and let that self-doubt, that worry, all that go out of your mind and body. Now bring your hands up to the center of your chest, focusing on the heart. The heart governs joy and sadness, and anything that you may be sad about at this time, whether it's now or from the past, just allow yourself to feel that feeling of sadness. Not trying to push it away or close it off or avoid it. Just let yourself feel it. The focus of this exercise is to get you okay feeling what comes through, accepting it, allowing it to come through you, and being comfortable with it. You can use it to your greater good. Focusing on any sadness. As you breathe in and out, just feel that sadness and where it's affecting your body. Then take a deep breath in. Exhale and send that sadness outside of your mind, heart, and body. Good. Now move your hand straight down to the center of your abdomen, small intestine area. Small intestine is all about discernment. So if you're having a problem with a certain situation, struggling with it, can't find the right answer, confusion, let yourself feel those feelings of uncertainty and confusion. Not trying to avoid them, not trying to push them away, feeling them. My goal is to be able to experience the full spectrum of emotions and be able to use them to create a better life for myself. So let yourself feel the confusion, the uncertainty. Let yourself feel it without judging it. Then take a deep breath in. And let it out. And now drop your hand just below the navel and focus on the bladder. That's the next meridian in order, the bladder. Bladder is the center of two different emotions. One is fear, and the other is just being irritated. An example of that would be a urinary infection which irritates you. So it deals with irritation and fear. So focus on anything related to fear that you might be afraid of. Something you may be afraid to face in yourself or in the world. Just let yourself feel that fear. Let it build. No judgment, just feeling and experiencing. And take a deep breath in and exhale all that fear, that irritability out of your bladder, out of your body, out of your mind. And the next meridian in order are the kidneys, which are in mid-back. So you can place your hands behind your back. You can do whatever's comfortable. You can do palm to your back or just the back of your hands. Focusing on the kidneys just below the rib cage, mid-back. And here, there's a different octave of the fear. It's more like being paralyzed, being terrified. Things that stop us in our tracks. The things that keep us from growing because we're afraid to face something. So think about something that keeps tripping you up, freezes you in your tracks, and keeps you from moving forward. Let yourself feel that terror of what that might be associated with. Intensifying the feeling in your body. There's also the concept of, with the kidneys, is feeling like it's you against the world. There's no one there to help you. So anything in that octave, focus on that and let yourself feel the feelings. And take a deep breath in. Exhale and release that fear, that paralyzation out of your mind and body. Now bring your hands back to over your heart. Now the next meridian is the pericardium meridian. It's the sac that surrounds the heart. It's the emotional heart. It relates to where we feel like we have to guard ourselves or protect ourselves, where we feel unsafe in emotional connections. So tune into those octaves of feeling vulnerable, feeling exposed in relationships. This is one that we tend to really hate. We tend to really try to avoid feeling vulnerable out of most emotions. But just try to entertain that feeling for a moment. And the more you entertain it in your mind, the more you'll get comfortable with it. So just let yourself feel vulnerable and exposed. It's like being up in front of hundreds of people and they're all looking at you. The tendency is to want to run from that, but breathe it in. Transform that vulnerability into being open no matter what happens. Take a deep breath in and then let those feelings out of your mind and body. Next, bring your hands up to your thyroid, your throat area. This is the triple warmer meridian. It relates to the endocrine system, the pineal, the pituitary, thyroid, thymus, pancreas, ovaries, testes, and adrenals. It's what the chakra system steps down into the body with. So focusing on the endocrine system. The endocrine system relates to balance, to relationships inside the body and outside the body. So focus on a relationship or a situation where it feels lopsided to you, where you're struggling to find balance, and all the feelings that go with struggling to find that balance in a relationship. Let yourself feel those feelings, not trying to deny or ignore them. And then take a deep breath in. And expel all that negativity in relationships out of your mind and body. Two more meridians to go. Take your hands and go to just below the right rib cage. Focusing first on the gallbladder. And it doesn't matter if you don't have a gallbladder, you still have the meridian. So if something's been removed from your body, you still have the meridian. The gallbladder meridian relates to resentment. So this is a nasty little feeling. It's very enticing, but it really wreaks havoc on the body. So think of truthfully, searching in your own mind, look for anywhere in your mind or body or heart that you're hiding maybe some resentment. Sometimes it's just towards ourselves. Bring that resentment to the surface. Pull it out of the mind, the heart, and the body. Let yourself feel that feeling without judgment. Resentment is actually, by itself, without it being too perverted, is a healthy emotion. It tells you when a relationship is really out of balance. When you start to resent someone, it's telling you, hey, you need to set a healthy boundary. You need to get this balanced out. But if you suppress it, that resentment turns into something even more nasty. So let's bring that resentment up to the surface. Take a deep breath in. Then expel all that resentment out of your mind, your heart, and your body. Keep your hands here because the last meridian is the liver meridian, the gallbladder's partner. The liver has to do with frustration and anger, a lower octave of resentment. Frustration is a better word, I think, to focus on because we can get angry about things, but there's certain things in our life that we just get frustrated about over and over and over and over. It's like those little walls you keep hitting in your life that frustrate the hell out of you. So think about those things that are restricting you, that seem to be in your way, that just drive you nuts, that you can't seem to get over the wall. And let that feeling of frustration build within your body. Don't try to run from it, feel it. And take a deep breath in. And exhale all that frustration out of your mind, heart, and body. Relax and shake out your hands. Since we did all that, let's just rub the K27 points. The collarbone point, you find your collarbone, you go underneath, and then you slide in towards the sternum, and there's a little bit of an indentation there as you reach your sternum. That's the K27 points. And those rebalance the body. Clint, go in a little bit more. In toward, there, right about that area there. Yeah. Usually with a lot of the meridian points, there's actually like a hollow indentation, not hollow, but there's like an indentation there. Okay, so let's get on with the rest of it. I want to go over what I wrote about adversity, and then we can discuss it. And the idea for me is maybe tap on some things. And like I said, since the beginning of this year, the group, like Amy brought up a couple of times, I think it was at the very beginning of the year, about being comfortable with feeling like sadness and anger. And it seems like the group is going more in that direction of just being okay with feeling our feelings and being okay with who we are. So to me, this is kind of just an extension of that, kind of growing from that. So I'm going to read this, and then afterwards, like I said, we'll discuss it and talk about how we might be able to use this in our lives. And then Sunday, we're going to take it a little bit deeper. I'm trying to find my little film. Otherwise, I'll just get it off YouTube. It's called The Great Year, and it's about these cycles that happen in reality. And we're going to look at like adversity plus that on Sunday and take it a little bit deeper. But for tonight, adversity, the ambassador of growth, expansion of consciousness, and enlightenment. To me, all three of those things are the same thing. Growth, people are always talking about growth, spiritual growth. Well, to me, growth or enlightenment or spirituality, I've said this before, I'm going to just throw this in here. When I think about somebody being spiritual, like, give me some ideas. When you see somebody that's spiritual, what do you say about them? What are you feeling and seeing in them?
Peace.
Peace. Okay. What else? Yes, they do. What else?
Just a calm, silent demeanor.
Okay.
Wisdom, wise.
Mm-hmm. For me, we get to be more spiritual, like I said, peace and calm and more centered and wise. For me, that happens when we're more conscious. So to me, for someone to be spiritual means actually they're more conscious. Like if I do this, this is going to happen. You know what I mean? And they're more like Amy said, they're more wise. So
Aware.
yeah, Beth.
So when we're talking about being comfortable with our feelings, what I see or hear you say is that instead of being to be able to move through them to accomplish something, to grow, to be able to be comfortable enough to go, yeah, I feel that way, and here's why, and here's when I get to the other side. Yeah,
like Amy said, she gave it. She could probably tell it better than me. She just gave us a little snapshot, but she said she was angry about something, and she was like, No, because a lot of us have had spiritual paths. Amy's been really big into the yoga path, and there's lots of spirituality tied within that. She's been more the spiritual than the like stretching, westernized version of it. So to me, there's a lot of mistruths in spirituality related to, the only emotion that's the good emotion is love. Well, to me, all emotions are meant to guide you, and now we're trying to get into that, letting ourselves feel it. So she let herself feel the anger and acknowledged it instead of suppressing it. So I don't know if you want to say anything on, that was
Yeah, I
it.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, and I was like trying to be better than my anger or whatever, I guess you could say, and it wasn't going anywhere. And finally, once I just acknowledged it and just like gave myself permission, this is how I feel, and that's it. It like lasted 10 more minutes.
Yeah. So that's how the exercise tonight is let yourself feel the emotion. If you're angry about something, just trying to tell you something. Like if somebody trespasses you or hits you or says something hateful to you and you get angry, there's something to that to me. It's like we should be honoring those feelings. And y'all have heard me talk about this before, and you can actually Wikipedia this. It's related to Jesus and that whole concept of turn the other cheek. Well, he always hung out with the lowlifes. He was trying to empower, not lowlifes, but what was considered to be the lower people, the prostitutes, the slaves, and things like that. And whenever they were hit, they were typically hit with the back of their hand because that was an insult. So if somebody hit me with the back of their hand, it would make my face turn this way. If I turn the other cheek, it's like saying hit me with the front of your hand, which is like treat me like an equal.
Hit me, show me some respect.
Yeah. So it's been misinterpreted like turn the other cheek means okay, when you hit me, hit me again. No, it's like if you're gonna come at me and treat me a certain way, treat me on the same level. That's what that means. So
what I'm hearing you say about like emotions is basically instead of when you become a little more conscious, you learn to utilize the emotion as opposed to either avoiding it altogether or getting lost in it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very Stephen,
you're actually realizing what the emotion's for and pushing through it to.
Exactly. And Stephen, you summed up a lot of it right there. It's like instead of ignoring it and letting it take over, you got to find that middle ground. And it's like the qigong. It's like you got to take that energy and direct it where you want to go. Like you can get pissed off for somebody cheating on you, but you can let that anger take a hold of you, and you can do 100 different things. You could slash the tires, key the car, or you could express your feelings like that really hurt me. There's a big difference or octave in those things. So it's not that we suppress our feelings, but we let them come through us, but we don't just let them blast out of us. It's like there's a balance there. We let them flow through, but then we're dancing with them.
I think that example, the last time I was here, you talked about relating emotions, and they were all negative emotions, to the elements and taking their example, of like being still or being patient or moving or breathing as a really sort of entry level of, okay, what do I do with this?
Yeah. And that's when Clint was here and he had talked about him having the experience of the fire and things like that. So yeah, using the elements, which I love the elements. To me, and that's why I had that picture up on to begin with. The 5 elements explain just about everything. I mean, they can work into the body in so many different ways. So there are different ways you can start to feel your emotions, like that little exercise we did to begin with. It's just, if you're by yourself, let's just experiment letting yourself feel a feeling without going, I think we all have certain ones that we run away from. Anger, we're all pretty good at that one. Like if we get hurt, it's easier to feel angry than sad. People tend to I don't want to feel sad. But in Chinese medicine, like grief when somebody passes away, there's actually a very important process that you do when you let your grief come out. It unhooks this energy from that person that passed away from you. Not that they're severed forever, but if you don't let that go, then you can be drained of energy on a constant daily basis. So it's important to grieve, and the grieving is, it's almost like a vomiting up of these not negative connections, but if that person is no longer here, you don't want to be connected to that person on the And you'll probably seen this lots of times. I've never worked hospice, but I know a couple people have had experiences. But there's people that'll hold on because people are wanting them to stay. They're like holding on.
They'll stay in their body, and their body will continue to go, even though there's nothing else there, really.
So grief is that, okay, it's the process of I really don't want to let this go, but I am. That's why the lungs and the colon are related. Colon is about I'm letting go. So let's start this and then we can go a little bit deeper. Love is a wonderful catalyst for growth. However, love sometimes is not enough to spur spiritual evolution. You may not want to admit it, but I bet you've experienced love not being enough at least once in your life. People erroneously want to eradicate adversity from the planet. However, growth on any level requires a certain amount of adversity. If you want to build muscles, you go to the gym and push against an opposing force. Maturing emotionally requires the adversity one encounters when meeting others' thoughts and feelings. Even developing the mind requires a certain amount of struggling with one's mind to rein it in and focus it. Adversity can be a person's own mental thoughts. It can be time, a group of people, the weather. Just about anything can be an adversity. Be an adversity. I personally would say that almost all adversity is rooted in limited perceptions and consciousness, which we'll get into. It's like, if I believe something is a particular way, then that limits what I'm going to experience. And it becomes
It puts it in a box.
Yeah, and then sometimes you wind up fighting against your own perception. So your perceptions are adversities. Instead of wanting to embrace adversity and see it as it truly is, the ambassador of growth, people want to kill it. Killing adversity would kill this reality. The crazy thing about this reality is you have to fight against adversity to grow, but you'll never be able to rid the planet of it completely. It's like evil. What we call evil is something we are meant to push against, which pushes us to grow. We will never be able to overcome it altogether, and in my opinion, we are not meant to do it. It's part of this reality, this classroom's design. Everyone is in a different place. Just because you have transcended a certain adversity doesn't mean others are done with it, and vice versa. It is the dualistic, polarized mind that sees good and bad, black and white, yin and yang. Yin and yang are two complementary forces, not two opposing forces. It seems they are opposing to a young dualistic mind, but they aren't. The enlightened brain sees all things as working for and to good, and uses everything for his, her, and everyone else's spiritual evolution, growth, expansion, and consciousness. That's kind of a small picture there on the right, but that's really the original concept of the yin and the yang. It's a farmer planting seed. So you have the dark side of the yin and the yang, but it doesn't mean darkness. It's like the womb where all life comes from, and then you have the light side, which is the sun. So if a farmer's planting something, he's bending over, and the sun's behind him, and the shadow is nurturing to the plant. When the farmer stands up and moves on, then the sun comes along. So it's like we need both of those energies. We need a nurturing energy, and then we need a stimulating energy. That's male-female. And neither one of them are good or bad over the other.
That's what I think. The interesting word is that you use the word good. Working towards good.
That's the best word I could come up with.
When I look at the word good, I don't think of the greater good, or what a lot of people attribute to good.
Mm-hmm.
I look at good as being balanced. Like you're either great or you're crappy, but if you're good,
yeah. Like
if somebody asks me how I am, and if I say I'm good, that generally means that I'm kind of in that middle.
Even keel.
Yeah, even keel.
Yeah.
So kind of in that balanced state.
And that's a good point, because that's what I tried to convey with good, but it's hard to find a word. In the heart, there's joy and sadness, and they're like on a seesaw. One time sadness is reigning over it, sometimes the joy is. But there's a point where the idea is what you said, the middle ground, and it's called content. So no matter what's going on, even if it's horrible, there's some part of you that is content in the storm. That's ideal, because sometimes, I've done this before, where sometimes, if I get all jazzed up and kind of manically happy or whatever, if I go around too happy, if I'm not careful, I'll bring some kind of downfall because I'm driving like a fool or doing something, I tend to eat more crappy things when I'm all being too high. So there's a balance state. Being really high isn't necessarily great, right? It's not too much better than being really, really low. It's about being centered. And, that's why I like the statues of Buddha and stuff like that, because to me, it represents that center content. It's like, you know what? All this stuff is happening around me, but I'm that quiet spot in the middle of the storm. That's how I want to be. Sometimes when you're up, you can cause problems. Oh, dude. Totally skipped a bunch. You saw that, baby. This is one of my favorite quotes, and basically, it's for some that are super religious. It kind of might bang against their perception, but the one that knows not that the Prince of Darkness is but the other face of the King of Light knows not me. And this is by Hall. And basically, what that means is, think about, we talk about God being this ultimate force that created reality. And then we have like the devil and evil and things like that. It's like, if the God is all-knowing, why in the hell is the devil in reality? Okay? And I don't necessarily believe in the devil per se as some redheaded, as some, sorry, Tracy. As some guy in a red suit and a pitchfork, right? But evil comes from our own perceptions and what we do when we're out of balance. But to think that, so what happens, and I went through a phase of this where I was like, okay, I'm starting to wake up and I'm looking at the world and I'm thinking, man, the world is really jacked up. I need to fix the world, okay? Along that path, I realized that it's all perfect and that we have to have the adversity in it, or the quote-unquote devil, to push people to do or to grow. And what's interesting is adversary, looking in the Bible, an enemy or one's opponent in like a contest. So when you're like, if you're wanting to up your game or to get better at playing something, you have to have an opponent, right? So what if the evil of the world or the negative things we come about are trying to make us just be a better being, right? And we have to have that adversary, that opponent to play against. Otherwise, we don't grow, right? We got to have a little bit of that conflict going on in our daily life. I studied underneath a shaman, and he said something I didn't get at the time, but I get it now. He says, if there's not some kind of struggle happening in your life on a fairly daily basis, then you've stopped growing. And I think that's true. If you're not willing to face some of the things that are happening around you or in you on a daily basis, then you become stagnant and your growth has stopped. Another word for adversity is the devil. And this comes from the Bible. This is Peter 5:8, and it says, be sober, be vigilant.
Have a village.
Vigilant. Be vigilant. Because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And we just started talking about this whole thing about being really, I don't want to murder that word. Being really vigilant. So whenever you have a negative thought, you need to catch it as it comes in, before it comes in, because here's what happens. You have a thought, and the more you entertain a thought, what kicks in? Your emotions, right?
And that puts it into action.
And that gets you trapped sometimes, because if you start getting negative about some thought, and by the time you let yourself get all the way wound up, then you're gone completely different than where you want to go. So it's like you want to be vigilant about what's coming into your mind and your feelings and your thoughts at any given time, which to me goes back to meditation or being fully present. But it's not about, I'm going to meditate for an hour today. To me, the meditative state, we talked about that, being in that center calm where you're in a meditative state even though the world's happening around you. And you have more power within it, because if you're caught up in the storm, you really can't affect the storm in a positive way if you're not anchored, right? So, this is a little more what we're going to go over on Sunday. I don't want to go in too much tonight. The planet has gone through numerous complete evolutions which are followed by dark ages. We are in a classroom. There are certain curriculums we must go through in order to pass and move on. These curriculums repeat themselves over and over on a small and large scale. We are all familiar with the term, history always repeats itself. The Dark Ages, which is Kali Yuga, Kali is the god that has all the arms, and you're very angry, and there's it's got like a necklace of skulls, yeah. Oh, and Clint actually talked about kind of like the Shiva, the fire, and
She's an aspect of Shiva.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And they are the beginning of the grade school or the class. And the age of truth, the Satya Yuga is the end of the school year, a little over 1 million years in total. After the Satya Yuga, the school year starts over with the Dark Ages. It is not your purpose, and this is just my opinion, it's not your purpose to change the class, but to do the work, pass the test, and graduate to the next grade before it all starts over. So you don't repeat the class, what Buddhists call tied to the wheel of birth and death. On the large scale of this curriculum is what many call the Great Year. And we're going to watch a video on that gets into the yugas. Basically, there's 4 yugas. And there's basically it goes through this whole cycle of the planets, the constellations, the 12 constellations, the planets, everything. And we go through, right now we're moving into that phase of where we're going up to an enlightened age. And here's the crazy thing. After that enlightened age, there's a dark age. All cycles back through. So, and that really frustrated the crap out of me when I first learned that, when I really started looking at that. But it makes sense when you look at the whole picture. I was like, that sucks. So
it's like the Mayans' wheels.
Exactly. The Mayan ties into that also. But it really frustrated me because I thought I was here to save the planet. and little did I know, I'm here to pass my test. Basically, and in a way, and Beth, this flashed in my head, but Beth had found a term that just relates to like tutor or something like that. So I'm a student, and I'm just trying to share what I've come across to help other people. So basically, we're all students trying to pass this grade, in my opinion. So on a larger scale, this curriculum is what they call the Great Year. And we'll be watching like a 50-minute video on that Sunday, and we'll then discuss the implications of the Great Year. But to sum that up, to me, what the implication is that there's just a cycle that this keeps happening and repeating over and over. You come and you learn lessons in this mansion, and then after you're here, you go into another mansion. And the Bible says in the heavens, God has many mansions. And I think learning keeps going and going and going. So, about these adversities, I think you're born into them. It's like being born on this planet. You're going to have a certain amount of adversity just from being human. The country you're born into, like say if the country's in war, you're born right into that adversity. The race you are, your gender, male, female, there's usually a lot of adversity in those in different ways there. Your family. So you're born into adversity that's coming to the planet. And then you swallow it. And I talk about this a lot. I call it passing the poisonous apple. It's like Adam and Eve eating this ignorance of good and bad, which is judgment, and then we've been passing it on. We got fed by our parents, and then unknowingly we pass it on. So we swallow these adversities in the mind from our parents, preachers, teachers, and peers, and then we also make them up. We see a group of people or we see somebody and we'll label them before we even know anything about them. And then now they're our enemy.
That's usually based on a fear.
Exactly. That's what I talk about. I think all adversity is rooted in limited consciousness. Whether it's passed on like the KKK. Because you imagine, talk about adversity. Here's a child, a brand new soul, clean slate, comes in, born into a KKK family. Dude, and that's a lot of negativity, adversity, and programming right from the get-go that person is swallowing on a daily basis, and it can't help but affect that child. But in the bigger scale, they're supposed to be learning something through that adversity, and sometimes the stronger the adversity, the more you get out of a lifetime. So some people will choose to have a huge amount of adversity, have some kind of huge illness, or be in a wheelchair, or be limited in a way that makes them have to face their adversity and not look at the adversity as something against them, but something that is making them stronger. The adversity is, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the gym each day. I'm facing that adversity because I want to make myself stronger. That's the perception to have. If you have the other way, then adversity is beating you. It's the devil possessing you. So we also tend to make up our own adversaries, thank you. Whether from real experiences, type this and I need help reading. Whether from real experiences or perceived slights. Even from childhood, an experience can happen, but a lot of the time, since parents don't think to really talk to their children on a deep level, they won't realize that the child is making up their own reason for something. Like this is like the 4th time Daddy told me he was going to take me somewhere, but he couldn't. So the child begins to make up their own ideas like, okay, Daddy doesn't love me, whatever that is. And then what happens typically is then you join groups that have the same kind of feelings and perceptions, and then you're all ganging up on a particular adversary, which sometimes is just perceived. It's
And those groups sometimes become religions.
Yeah, religion. Yeah. But to bring in the devil again, if you're looking at the devil as an adversary, the higher mind goes, okay, the devil is actually pushing me to grow. And that's why I threw that quote in there, because when you realize that really, when somebody in your life is pushing you in a negative way, they're looking evil or negative or bad, they're actually pushing you to grow. And if you can see that, then actually they're there for your good. And so that doesn't mean that you live with them the rest of your life, but like if it's an abusive relationship, it means honor, love yourself, and get the hell out. That's what you need to be learning through that. But if you can still have that perception that everything is for my good, it lessens some of that to a degree. Like if I'm looking at my adversity or limitation as something that's beating me up, it's going to be so much harder to transcend it. This is kind of the last slide here, and then we'll kind of open the discussion and do some tapping if somebody wants to on the issue. Clearing the issue or making a game of it. Get or be comfortable with adversity. You aren't going to be able to avoid it. So you might as well get comfortable with the adversity. You might as well get comfortable with your negative feelings that come up out. That's one thing. The second is think about what you will gain in facing the adversity before you. So example, going to the gym. I've been going to the gym regularly since the new year started. And there's mornings I'm like, I can really sleep in today. You know what I mean? But by facing that, making myself get up and do it, forcing myself to face that limiting thought within me that's going to keep me where I am, my end goal is I'm getting stronger, healthier, and better. Sometimes that takes some of the charge of it off. And then the bottom line is to be a spiritual warrior for yourself and others, to be able to face that adversity. Because the more you face adversity, the more you can help others face it. Because if you're not facing it, it's hard to help others do the same thing. Anyway, that was basically the end of that little presentation. So, any thoughts, feelings? Thanks.
Don't kill the word vigilant.
Vigilant. Diligent.
Diligent.
A little dyslexic. So, nothing there? Anybody want to tap on a particular issue? I'm going to stop this.